off Phil Nevin. He has flied out and walked. Haney has walked 3 tonight, and he comes up and hits Phil right square in the back, and Nevin fires the bat away towards his dugout. And the Angels with a base runner here in this 5th inning.
The right fielder, Garrett Anderson.
Fastball right between the numbers on Nevin. Yep. Turns away from the ball. Ouch. They get you right below the shoulder blade. Nevin, of course, angry about it. Nobody likes to get hit. Fires that bat toward the dugout and makes his way to first base.
Temperature has dropped considerably down to 73, and there is a low pressure system coming from the west, Jerry. Ooh, this is the 2nd time he's hit Phil Nevin, and here he comes. I do not know what this is about, but Nevin hit twice. Phil Nevin hit for the 5th time this year, and back-to-back by first starter Chris Haney, and now his reserve Jim Pitsley, and Pitsley's control was outstanding, so I have no idea if Kansas City has something against Phil for what may have happened in Detroit.
There's definitely something there. We don't know what the answer is at this point, but when you plunk somebody in the back on consecutive at-bats with different pitchers, there's a story behind it.
And Nevin had just had enough. He got one square in the back in the 5th inning. In the 7th, he said, that's it. So Phil walks off the field. He has made his point. He knows he's been tossed out of the game, but Jim Pitsley hitting him in the back. And it will be interesting on how Tim Tashida, Don Denkinger, Marty Foster, Rick Reed gather and make a decision on who stays and who goes in this game.
Well, the umpires are trying to separate the white uniforms from the guys in gray so that they can conference and see exactly who's going to stay in this ball game and who's going to go.
Phil with that football mentality. And I'm not sure if Phil pointed at Jarrett Washburn and said, I want one. I want to win. Phil turned around and he said, I want to win. Or I want one. Because check this out, Jerry.
There's no mistake about it. First pitch gets him right in the back. That's a little bit too close to the head.
Yeah.
If I'm Phil Nevin, I'm thinking the same thing. Something's got to be done about this. If the umpires aren't going to do it, then I'm going to go out there and take care of business myself.
So Tony Muser out, and he is visiting with the umpires. We'll find out who has been tossed in this game, but you're right, that was high. And I remember last year when Ben McDonald came up and in to Garrett Anderson and almost hit Garrett in the head. And Chuck Finley, the professional that he is, the Angels had been taking inside pitches and hit by the Milwaukee Brewers. And finally, Finley comes back out and hits one of the Brewers square in the lower back, and then stares at the dugout and says, that's where you throw it at him.
Now, Collins had a meeting with Percival, a word or two with him, talking probably to the bullpen and sending a message as to we're going to put an end to this. We'll stop it. We'll take care of this in another way, because you do play another time during this season. And if you go out there now and throw at somebody you started, you're going to have a lot of ejections. The Angels not at full strength for their pitching staff. They got some things to have to think about if they lose ball players due to suspension.
And Jared Washburn never thought his major league debut would continue with a fracas like this. Jim Pitsley has been thrown out of the game, but obviously some bad blood between Kansas City and Phil Nevin, because Chris Haney, the starter, went after Phil square in the back, and then Pitsley went after Nevin in the back up high near his head. And Muser's been tossed as well. Jerry, nothing happened yesterday, and Phil Nevin was the Angels catcher. So the Angels trying to sweep this series. Jamie Quirk will be the skipper for the second straight night as Tony Muser has been canned. Maybe Jamie's been thrown out. An emotional game as Kansas City trailing 5-1 in the 7th inning. We'll take a short break and come back as Kansas City down to the Angels by 4. And Rich DeLucia, he hits Dean Palmer. DeLucia has been tossed from the game. And here comes Terry Collins. And Kansas City will not retaliate. It's even now, Jer.
That all depends on who you talk to. It all depends on whose ox is gored most often. If you ask Phil Nevin, they still should have another shot at one of the Kansas City players. What Terry might be arguing here is intent. Can this pitcher come inside? Because he didn't hit him in the upper part of the back. He's talking about the location where that ball plunked the hitter Palmer.
Tony knows that's part of the game. And he was probably wondering, there may have even been a bet in the dugout, who would be the guy that gets drilled. Did drive in a run in the second inning with runners in second and third and his ground out to short. Ooh, and Erstad gets hit in the back and he starts walking out towards Scott Service. 3 Angels have been hit in this game and they have just tossed Scott Service. And the Angels start walking out, and Larry Boa is right at the foul line, and he's furious. Now, this is the Angels' future. Erstad has been an absolute star this year, and when you start picking on the stars, I mean, they hit Erstad, or rather, Phil Nevin, twice on purpose. Tony Muser had to know they were going to come back and hit one of their guys. They did, hitting Dean Palmer in the wallet. Where a major league pitcher will tell you that's where you go. Lower backside. And Tim Tashida, he has had enough. He said, we do not need this anymore. I'm surprised Tony Muser hasn't been tossed from the game. Or perhaps he has right now.
If Collins goes after the warning, and both benches have been warned, if they throw the pitcher's service out of the ball game, the Muser's got to go with them. There's really been no fight by Tony on this. And it's Deckinger, the crew chief, and home plate umpire Tim Tashida that's explaining the situation to Muser. Really, there's no cause for explanation. That's the rule, and let's move on.
Exactly, but I cannot. You would think 2-1 was going to even things up with the Angels getting the last one. But when Kansas City comes back and plunks the Angels' best in Darren Erstad, well, you're going to have tempers flare again. And maybe Tony Muser trying to convince them that no, he was just throwing inside, trying to establish the inside corner. I don't think so. And I should tell our producer Chuck McKean that Mike and Don Washburn would like a tape of this game. Jamie Weimer will send it on the way. That's up and in, and Holtz is gone. He did not hit Offerman. He came up and in, and Mike Holtz has now been tossed from the game. Holtz is saying, hey, I'm just coming up and in. Larry Boa and Jose Offerman are in a jawing match in between home plate and the dugout. And Rod Carew screaming as he's trying to protect his guys, his hitters. Well, here we go, Jerry.
You just got to figure that something's going to happen after all these hit batsmen. Players getting ejected from the game. Both managers are gone. So this one's going to take a little while to settle things down.
But now what you want is that no one gets hurt. That's the key, as we have a scrum here. And here goes Gary DiSarcina. And Dave Hollins. Frank White is holding down Gary DiSarcina, patting him in the back, saying, let's settle down and get this game over without anybody getting hurt. There's the guy no one wants to mess with if you're on Kansas City, Dave Hollins, the Angels' third baseman. Jose Offerman got a pitch inside from Mike Holtz. 3 Angels have been hit tonight, and 1 Kansas City Royal. Rod Carew cooling his head with Bruce Keeson. Well, Jerry, we thought this may have ended later in July or September when the two clubs meet again in Kansas City in July, in September, in Anaheim. But they weren't finished here in the 9th inning.
The umpires now get themselves infiltrated with the players as the action seems to have ceased, and what they're going to try to do is get some kind of order so that we can resume play here.
Well, Tony Musier, who has been kicked out of the game, has come back on. He's still screaming at the umpires, but he was just pulling his players off, grabbing Jose Offerman and literally throwing him into the dugout to try and cool this thing off. DiSarcina went after one of the Royals and tackled him near the first base line. Well, we have seen a wild one tonight. Phil Nevin was the guy who was hit twice in this game, in the middle of the back and in the upper back near his head. Those are things that never should happen by major league pitchers. If you're throwing at a guy, there's only one place to throw at him, and that is the lower back. And now Tim Teixeira, Don Denkinger, Marty Foster, and Rick Reed will gather again and try and cool this thing off that is really heated up again in the bottom of the 9th inning. Oh, poor Jared Washburn. He's sitting with his jacket on in the dugout. This is his major league debut, and he's going, man, how about this? How about this big leagues? This is fun. World Championship Wrestling and Major League Baseball all in one night for the kid from Webster, Wisconsin.
Well, this is what started the latest Donnybrook. First pitch delivered by Mike Holtz, way inside, way off the plate. And that's it. Tim Teixeira says, okay, warnings have been issued, you're gone. And what he's trying to do then is keep Offerman from going out after Holtz. And enough was enough as far as the Angels bench was concerned. Kansas City looking ripe for a fight. They wanted a piece of it too.
And Rod Carew protecting his hitters. He was the most upset as they went after Nevin. They went after Erstad, and Rod says those are my guys. So Joe Madden, he finds out who has been tossed, and we'll tell you who has been crossed out of this ball game when we come back, we hope.
Nevin hit in the back by Chris Haney. Now at this point, you're not thinking anything's that big a deal. Nothing erupts. Both managers are calm. No ejections at this point. Nevin, though, up in the 7th. Jim Pitchley hits him. Here we go. Uh-oh. Look at that. That's a takedown there. Benches would clear.
Dugouts empty.
This was the beginning of a messy, messy evening. Pitchley would be ejected, and after order was restored, Nevin would also be ejected.
Would have to be leaving. Certainly Nevin's going to be leaving.
Bottom of the 8th. 7-1 Angels. Rich DeLucia hits Dean Palmer.
No luck in 3 tries.
Now, at this point, DeLucia is ejected, and Terry Collins is ejected. Still with us, top of the ninth. Darren Erstad faces Scott Service. Whoops! Gary DiSarcina, we make this warning. Don't read DiSarcina's lips. Don't read them. Tony Muser is ejected by the umps, the Kansas City manager. Nothing out of the ordinary here. At least no punches thrown. So Muser thrown out at this point. Bottom 9, Angels up 7-2. Mike Holtz pitching. Throws inside to Jose Offerman. Holtz gets ejected. Here come the bullpen. Troy Percival leading the charge out of the Anaheim bullpen.
Well, you had a feeling that might happen, didn't you?
Showing some great speed, I might add. The bench is clear again. Look at that massive humanity. Now watch Felix Martinez. 1995, he was thrown out of 13 games in the minors. Earlier this year, remember, he broke Otis Nixon's jaw. He made the sucker punch, and this caused the most significant action of the entire evening. This was incredible. Martinez chased by everybody. Jack McDowell's on the DL, and he even got into this. Martinez is backpedaling. Angels going all over him. DiSarcina chased him. Everybody chased him. Muser then takes Martinez to the clubhouse. Cecil Fielder. You don't want to mess with Big Cecil. He's having some words. My heavens. It finally ended, and Anaheim won by the score of 7-5.